Hi everybody, and in this video I'm going to walk you through the Egoscue method's rotator cuff sequence. You may have noticed that I have been joined by a little friend today. This is my dog Gozo, and ordinarily I would not be so naive to think that this was a good idea, but we are currently undergoing a house renovation and our house is very dusty and very loud. Lots of banging, lots of builders, and I can't leave him at home. So if I want to get any filming done, he has to be here. So I'm going to give this a go, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and I shan't try and do this again. But it might be quite fun, mightn't it, Gozo? Yeah? So I'll try and ignore him as much as I can once I get going. So we're going to do rotator cuff sequence, which is an Egoscue method prescribed order. So these are 4 exercises that together comprise what they call the rotator cuff sequence. The rotator cuff is a group of muscles in your shoulder that help to rotate your arm and move your shoulder blade. What I will say is that this routine is probably not suitable for you if you have a rotator cuff injury or rotator cuff pain. Lots of you watching this will understand the principles of posture therapy already, but some of you watching this may not, so I'm going to say it now. The area of your body that hurts is most likely hurting because it's strained and overworking. If you work it more, you will strain and overwork it more, so therefore it will hurt more. So if you have a rotator cuff injury, your body is probably saying, please keep away from my rotator cuff, leave it alone, work on something else so that the rotator cuff can ease off. If you have rotator cuff problems, it's very likely that your shoulder cannot sit properly on your rib cage, and then when you use your arm or try and rotate your arm, the muscles just can't interact with each other properly because the shoulder is not in position. You don't necessarily have to do more shoulder exercises to rectify that. You might need to do feet exercises or pelvic exercises or rib cage exercises. So if you're a member of the Posture Squad, all of this will be revealed. You can ask me as many questions as you like, and I will help you get to the bottom of where your rotator cuff problems are coming from. But this probably won't suit you if that is a symptom that you have. If you are somebody who has rounded shoulders like me that feel stiff but they don't hurt, the rotator cuff sequence is about one of the most amazing things that you can do. I love this sequence. All you're going to need is a can of something or a small hand weight. If you don't have one, doesn't matter, but it can make it a little bit more difficult. We're going to do rotator cuff sequence twice through, but this is a routine that typically you might do 3 or 4 times through because that repetition really helps the changes like concrete in place. What I love about the exercises in rotator cuff sequence is that once you've learned them, you can really do them when you're watching TV and things like that. So this is something that I will just quite mindlessly do in the evenings on the floor with a little hand weight, and it just helps to open up my chest and my shoulders. So we're going to actually start off not with the Tim. I'm going to come to a kneeling position. I'd recommend that you do this standing up, but you can do this first exercise sat in a chair, or you can do it kneeling like me, but I'm kneeling just because otherwise I won't fit in the screen. But what we are going to do is golfer's grip. So if golfer's grip doesn't mean anything to you, I need you to go and look at my golfer's grip hand position video so that you understand it. But we're getting ourselves into golfer's grip. Our hands are going to be in front of us with our thumbs facing towards each other. And with control rather than momentum, we're going to squeeze our shoulder blades back and down behind us like this. So I'll show you side on too, but I'm taking my arms like this. Out towards the side, my thumbs are facing forwards, and then I bring the arms back in front of me. So I'm moving in a kind of diagonal position here. My head's not moving forwards and backwards. My rib cage is not lifting upwards. And I'm not throwing my arms behind me using momentum. I'm using control and power from my shoulder blades and from my rear arms. So it looks like that. Sideways, remember, I would ordinarily say to do this standing. I'm kneeling for the sake of the camera angle, but arms are out in front like this, taking the arms behind. So notice that I'm really nice and slow in control. I'm not throwing my arms and then puffing my rib cage up. There's no momentum, just control. We're going to breathe in and out of our nose. I'm not going to I will set a timer. Typically, we would do 20 reps in each position. I'll do a timer for a minute. Doesn't matter if you do more, doesn't matter if you do less, but work at your own pace. Off we go. So my elbows are straight, my wrists are straight. My hands are firm in the golfer's grip position. I'm not lifting my rib cage up and down. I'm not poking my head forwards and backwards. I'm not gritting my teeth. I'm not clenching my belly. I'm breathing in and out of my nose, keeping my body nice and relaxed. And what I'm trying to do is really wake up my rear arm muscles to pull my arms back behind me and to move the shoulder blades back and down away from my ears. So I'm not using momentum. I'm really trying to activate my shoulder blades in this movement. We've got just over 10 seconds left. And this is position 1 of rotator cuff sequence. 5, 3, and 1. Okay, so that's position 1. And position 2, we are going to come to a side lying position. This is where my dog may be getting a bit interested. Let's see how we go. So I want you to be comfortable in your side lying position. So I've got one hip stacked on top of the other, and if my hips were car headlamps, they're facing towards the camera, they're not facing up towards the ceiling. So they're facing up towards the ceiling, your pelvis is rotating. So I've got one knee on top of the other, I've got one hip on top of the other. I've got my right elbow bent and my right hand underneath my head like this, but you can have your head down or you can have your head in a pillow if you want. My dog is going to make this slightly problematic, but let's see how we go. I've got my left elbow tucked into my waist here, and that's really important. So I'm keeping my left upper arm really, really still in this exercise. It's not moving backwards, it's not moving forwards. And what I'm going to be doing is like a weird little robot, keeping my elbow at 90 degrees, making sure there's no bending at my wrists. I'm going to do this movement here. So once again, I'm trying to drive this movement from the upper arm and from the shoulder, not from the hand or from the wrist. And I'm really making sure, if my dog wasn't here, I'd go down a bit lower, but actually the most important thing is the lifting up, because that opens up the front of the chest and is really good for kind of counteracting what happens when we spend lots of time at a desk. So again, there's no momentum here. I'm not flopping around passively. I'm really trying to connect with my triceps, my rotator cuff, and my lats and my mid-back and my kind of oblique muscles. So I really want you to feel things going on at the back of your arm, into your shoulder, and into the side of your torso. We'll do a minute here. Off we go. So just nice and slowly. Notice how my upper arm is staying totally still. I'm pivoting on that upper arm. So the upper arm is rotating, but I'm not moving the elbow like forwards or backwards or up or down. We keep breathing. Relax your frown lines, relax your jaw, relax your belly. Trying to keep this forearm at 90 degrees. So we don't want the wrist moving away or the wrists being like this. Trying to keep 90 degrees there. And what this is doing is really helping to open up the front of your kind of collarbone and your chest. Hopefully you're feeling those rear arm muscles. The further backwards you take your weight, but remember, you don't need a weight, you can just have like a fist. The further backwards you take your weight here, you're going to notice that those rear arm muscles wake up more. But just make sure that it is not your wrist bending. So when you get to the top here, You might be tempted to bend your wrist back, but that's your wrist compensating. It has to come from your shoulder. And now that my dog's moved, I can show you that kind of full range of movement. Oh, we've done over a minute, so I'll have to do a little bit over a minute on the other side. So we're doing exactly the same thing. He'll probably follow me now because I've moved position. So I'm on my left-hand side, right knees are stacked, my hip is stacked one in front of the other, my left elbow is in a kind of straight line to open up the armpit. A minute here, off we go. I think there is someone behind the door. Go Zoe. Good boy. This isn't very helpful. So just notice differences from side to side. My main difference from side to side is that my dog had rubbed into me a bit more this side. So my arm stays still. I'm pivoting around that point at my elbow, trying to keep my forearm in alignment with the elbow, so not away, not closer. And I'm really trying to take that arm back as far as I can without bending the wrist, but I'm trying to drive that opening of the shoulder from the upper arm and from the shoulder blade. We'll do another just over 15 seconds because I went to 1 minute and 15 on the other side. Keep your face relaxed, keep breathing. 2 and 1. So that was rotator cuff position 2. Now we're going to go on to position 3. Let's see how we do with this one. So this time we're going to come to our hook lying position, which means knees bent, feet flat on the floor. And we're going to do a very similar movement to what we've just done, but our arms are going to be in a different position. So this time we're doing this type of movement here. So very, very similar, where we're kind of having that robot cactus arm. And what we're looking for again is that the wrist doesn't kind of create a bicep curl or the wrist doesn't move away. The wrist is staying above the elbow throughout, and the movement is coming from that upper arm rotating rather than the wrist bending or the wrist moving away from the 90-degree angle. And what I love / hate about this position is this demonstrates so nicely how out of position my right shoulder is. My left one's a lot better, but here you can see how the bony mass of my right shoulder is so far off the floor. This should be touching the floor back here. So as much as you can, what I want you to try and do is kind of wiggle yourself so that your shoulder blade is as far back towards the floor as it can be. So hopefully you can see a difference there where it's definitely not perfect, but that bony mass of my right shoulder is much closer to the floor, and I'm trying to keep that there without flaring my rib cage up. And then I'm really keeping my right elbow tucked into my body. So you're going to notice that your elbow is going to want to drift away, and that's your arm cheating. We're really keeping the elbow tucked in. We're really trying to ground through the back of the shoulder without tilting the head backwards. We're going to do a minute here, off we go. So again, this is really controlled. This is not about speed. And it's not about momentum. So it's very easy in this exercise to be very passive. Some people will do this and say they don't feel anything. And what's happening is they're kind of flopping their hand around and bending their wrist. You are trying to close your eyes, I think, and envision all of these muscles here in the front of your chest peeling open. You're pushing that arm back into the floor. You're not just pushing your elbow back into the floor, you're pushing your shoulder back into the floor. You're pushing the top of the arm back into the floor. You're keeping that elbow tucked in towards your body whilst also trying to push backwards through that arm. Keeping breathing. There's no flopping happening here. This is very controlled. 3, 2, and 1. I'm not going to swap myself around here, but I am going to swap my arms around. So now my can is in my left hand, tucking that left elbow in, really trying to ground that left shoulder down onto the floor without tilting my chin up or without lifting my rib cage up. Off we go. So keeping the arm at 90 degrees. Just moving nice and slowly. Back of the neck long, so you kind of give yourself a little bit of a double chin. You can use a pillow if you need. The bottom of the rib cage stays grounded on the floor. The belly stays relaxed. The elbows tuck in, the elbow tucks into your body, so the elbow's not sliding away from your waist. You're keeping that wrist at 90 degrees throughout the exercise. So it's not a bicep curl and you're not moving that can towards your waist. You're really trying to keep everything at 90 degrees. And we've got one more exercise in the sequence. We'll run through all of them again and then we'll be finished. But like I said, I recommend doing this like 3 or 4 times over. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So we're staying exactly where we are. I'm just going to shift downwards slightly. We're staying exactly where we are. This time, we're going to get ourselves into this type of position. So the can is in our right hand if you're doing the same side as me. My elbow is level with my shoulder, so it's not higher than my shoulder. It's not lower than my shoulder. It's level with my shoulder. I'm keeping that wrist above the elbow. So once again, the wrist isn't going sideways out wide or coming into my body. I'm keeping the wrist above the elbow so that the rotation is happening through the upper arm, not because I'm bending my wrist in any direction, nor kind of cheating with my forearm. So really imagine that you're a robot. You have no movement through this part. Everything is happening because that arm is rotating. And that's where we sort of isolate the rotator cuff and stop the wrist and the hand from cheating. Back of the neck stays long, rib cage stays down, a minute here, off we go. So I'm very similar, but notice here that as I go backwards, I'm not bending my wrist. I'm not trying to get my fingers on the floor, because if you're aiming for your fingers to be on the floor, you're going to bend your wrist. You're trying to get the back of your wrist touching the floor. So if you're aiming for the back of your wrist to touch the floor, that will make sure that your wrist is not compensating. You might not have the rotation in your arms. So if you don't have the function, you may only go to about here before you want to bend, and that's fine. You're just going to work within the range of movement that you have before that wrist wants to compensate, or before the arm wants to move away, or before you get pain, or before you hold your breath. So we're looking out for all of these things. We shouldn't be in pain. We shouldn't be holding our breath. We shouldn't be cheating with our wrist or our forearm or our neck or our rib cage. And that's time. And setting myself up so my left elbow is in alignment with the left shoulder. Left wrist stays above that left elbow, making sure there's no bending. Nice and robotic, off we go. You can do whatever you want with your other hand, by the way. So in an ideal world, what we'd be looking for is for the wrist to come back and touch the floor behind you, but we don't want your hand to be able to touch the floor in front of you. So if you're touching the floor in front of you with your can, your shoulder hasn't kind of kept you stable. We want the shoulder blades back and down behind you throughout this exercise. It's the arm that's rotating rather than it being the shoulder moving. So if you're controlling your shoulder properly, you won't be able to touch the floor in front of you. Just over 10 seconds left. And that's time. So that's one round through. We're going to do another round through, and like I said, I'd recommend doing this 3 or 4 times, but for the sake of length of the video, I'm just going to do it twice. So we're doing this one to start with. Remember, it's not that puffing and the chest moving, because that's just momentum and clumsiness. We're keeping the rib cage down and we're being really nice and controlled, moving from the shoulders and from the upper arms. Golfer's grip hands, off we go. Set the timer for a minute. Really trying to squeeze those shoulder blades behind you. When you reach the top, the hands come in front of you and you're sort of moving backwards on a diagonal. I'm not using momentum, I'm using muscular control. Breathing, relaxing your face, relaxing your jaw. Ngosi's relaxing his eyes, aren't you? Cocker Spaniels have a way of looking at you with the most sad, sweet eyes. And they always mean that he gets whatever he wants. 10 seconds left. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So I'm grabbing my can. This is where we're going to do our side lying, which seems to be the one that interests Gozo the most. So knees stacked, hips stacked. Remember, no bending at the wrists, no movement in the forearms. We're just pivoting open like a robot here. Off we go. Got 1 minute. So my upper arm stays like on my waist. And as I get to the top, I'm going a bit further than like my brain wants me to, but I'm driving the movement from my shoulder and my upper arm so I feel my side torso muscles wake up there. It's not my wrist or my hand or my forearm leading this movement, because if you're focusing on that, you're going to fling around using momentum. Keep breathing. Relax your jaw. Relax your face. Breathing in and out of your nose, sending that breath deep into your diaphragm, the lower ribs. So we want movement of the lower ribs on the inhale and the exhale. Breathing in and out of the nose, breathing slowly, breathing quietly. 3, 2, and 1. So same thing, other side. Getting yourself set up. Knees stacked, pelvis stacked, no bending at the wrists, keeping that arm tucked in, off we go. Really envisioning muscles doing this rather than momentum. Like I said earlier, this is one of those like sequences where some people do it in such a kind of clumsy, mindless way that they're very passive and they're just sort of flopping around. There's lots of like this type of stuff going on. I really want you to use your triceps and your shoulders and your mid-back muscles to create this opening. And you'll feel what I mean. It's just a completely different exercise when we're not using momentum. Noticing differences from side to side. So you might have one side that just feels way easier than the other. And well done if that's the case, because you've identified that one side is more dysfunctional in external rotation, which is really what we're working on in not all of these moves actually, but most of them. And that's time. And then we're going to do that one where I have to really control my naughty right shoulder, which is very dysfunctional. So I'm kind of getting myself in. I like to squeeze my shoulder blades behind me, but as I do that, I'm not puffing the rib cage up. The rib cage stays down. You can use a pillow if you need to. Keeping that right elbow tucked in, but also trying to move the right shoulder and right upper arm down towards the floor. A minute here, off we go. So again, I'm not using momentum. I'm really trying to, I always close my eyes in most posture exercises, but especially this one. It's not just about flopping that hand down towards the floor. It's trying to use the upper arm and the shoulder to really open up the front of the collarbone. As I get towards the floor, I'm not bending my wrists to trick my ego into thinking that I've got open shoulders. I'm keeping the wrist nice and straight. And over time, I'll be able to kind of go all the way down to the floor. And in fact, I can do it, but I'm not bending my wrist. And as I do that, I can feel shaking all the way down into my right waist, which is actually really nice. And with rotator cuff, whilst it's officially like reps, you know, we're doing continuous reps here, Actually, I find when you find a spot that feels really good, so for me, just like holding it open on my right-hand side like this feels really nice and I can feel like releasing going on here, I recommend just holding it. If it feels good and you feel like shaky and wobbly and it's working hard, then hold it because it might help create more of a release for you. That is time. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. Off we go. So keeping that left elbow tucked into the waist. The left upper arm is on the floor, not just the elbow pushing down, but the whole upper arm is pushing down. We're keeping the wrist in alignment with the elbow, so we're not doing a bicep curl. If someone looks down at you, it's like your elbow is staying at 90 degrees the whole time. Doesn't matter if you can't touch the floor with the back of your wrist, but you're just trying to find positions and ranges of movements and nooks and crannies that work for you. Make sure your knees aren't falling in or falling out. The back of the neck stays long and the breathing stays calm in and out of your nose. It is so much easier for me to do this on my left-hand side. My right-hand side is much more like internal and kind of stuck. I'm right-handed, I'm on my phone a lot, I'm on my computer a lot, do lots more things with my right hand, so it makes sense. Okay, so we've got our final position, can back in that right hand, elbow at shoulder height, no bending here, really plugging back and down with that shoulder so that we can go backwards, but when we come forwards, we're not just flopping and moving out of the shoulder like this, okay? The shoulder stays behind you, so you're only gonna be able to go forwards about there. You're trying to keep your arm from moving up and down. It's just rotating on the spot. Off we go. Nice and slowly. So yes, you do want your wrist to touch the floor behind you, but you don't want your fingers to touch the floor behind you because then you're going to be more likely to want to bend your wrist to get there. Three, two, and one. And last one, but like I said, I would recommend doing this one or two more times. Off we go. So just running through the whole sequence almost as many times as you have time for, because you'll get more impact. So if you're watching a film or you're watching kind of longish TV show, you could probably do this a number of times over. I'm really plugging my left shoulder back and down behind me. The shoulder is not rounding off the floor as I rotate my arm forwards. My forearm stays in that 90-degree angle as I rotate forwards and backwards. I'm not bending my wrists in any direction. I'm not tilting my head backwards or lifting my rib cage upwards. And that is time. So that was our 2 times round of rotator cuff sequence. I hope you enjoyed the guest appearance from my dog. He was kind of okay. Could have been better, could have been worse. And hopefully when you stand back up out of this one, you're going to notice that your chest just feels more open. You might notice that your shoulders feel like they're much further back and down behind you, and you might feel more upright in your upper body. And if so, that is a really good sign that that routine suited you. If your shoulder pain feels worse, or your neck feels more tense maybe, then it's a sign that your body was like compensating too much in this exercise routine, so it just wasn't the one for you. Find something else instead, and I'll see you again soon.